With options both inside the New Orleans Saints facility and elsewhere, eventually a mobile quarterback will be necessary for Kellen Moore's offense. We got all that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend, Ross Jaxson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as the Saints beat writer over at LouisianaSports.net and Saints analyst with WWL TV. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, don't expect the 2025 Saints to be a clone of the Philadelphia Eagles. The offensive coaching staff is taking shape in a very interesting way, and a mobile quarterback will soon be necessary for Kellen Moore's New Orleans Saints offense. We got all that and much more coming up for you on today's show. We appreciate you very much, as always, for making us your first listen and for being an everydayer here on the show, which is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Whether it gets done here in 2025 or if it's something that happens in the future, a mobile quarterback will eventually be necessary for Kellen Moore's offense here in New Orleans. The Saints have an option in-house in Spencer Rattler, several options outside of the facility as well, including this year's NFL draft, potentially an NFL free agency with a guy like Justin Fields. In the draft, you can expect names like Jaxson as well out of Ole Miss, as well as Alabama's Jalen Milroe to be the ones that kind of surface up and kind of get the most attention when it comes to the mobile quarterback guys. And remember, there's a difference here between mobile quarterback and dual threat quarterback. The dual threat quarterback I think of as like a Jalen Hurts, well, not necessarily a Jalen Hurts, probably more so like a Lamar Jackson or a Jaden Daniels. Jalen Hurts is right in the middle of those guys for me. But when it comes down to the dual threat, they're just as much a threat with their legs as they are with their arm. For me, Jalen Hurts is a little bit more of like the quarterback that can run, right? And so I look at him the same way that I look at like a Josh Allen or a Patrick Mahomes in terms of archetype. You know, you can have the argument about, are these guys elite quarterbacks, whatever. That's not the conversation we're having today. But when it comes down to, you know, what is that style of quarterback, that's where I think those guys are. And really, I put Jalen Hurts kind of in the middle of where that dual threat and mobile quarterback is, right? So I think you can have a Joe Burrow or a Baker Mayfield and be in just as good a position if you're in Kellen Moore's offense. So I'm just talking about a quarterback that can move, a guy that is mobile, that can work out a structure, that can play a little bit of the playground style of football, that can throw on the run, and that can go out and pick up some yards with his legs as well. It doesn't necessarily have to be a 1,000-yard rusher in the meanwhile. So just to clarify what I mean there, but I do think that mobile quarterback is going to be something that matters for Kellen Moore's offense. Here's why. I'll give you the numbers as to why. A few days ago, we broke down and we mentioned kind of the play action, or not the play action snaps, I'm sorry, but the shotgun snaps that we saw so heavily utilized in Kellen Moore's offenses across all three quarterbacks that he's worked with heavily. Jalen Hurts, Justin Herbert, as well as Dak Prescott. And those are, of course, they were in four different offenses, really, as the Cowboys kind of changed how they played offense at one point. And so really two different offenses in Dallas, a different one in LA, and then finally a different one as well in Philly last year. And the reason why we were looking at the number of shotgun snaps, or the percentage of shotgun snaps during that time, is because we were looking at it compared to Jalen Milroe, who was asked to do all these things during the Senior Bowl that he might not even really be asked to do in the NFL by going under center and doing all these things. Like, that's not necessarily the pro game anymore. You don't have to take a bunch of snaps under center. You got to be able to manage a couple every now and then, but you can fall into an NFL offense that runs you out of shotgun constantly. And Kellen Moore's offenses have been an example of that. 91% for Jalen Hurts, 95.6% for Justin Herbert, 95.3% for Dak Prescott back in 2022. So you see a lot of this shotgun work. So, Ross, what do shotgun snaps have to do with the need for a mobile quarterback? Well, a lot of the times when you're running these shotgun snaps with all three of these quarterbacks, Dak Prescott, Justin Herbert, and Jalen Hurts, the threat of the quarterback keeping the football and running is relevant. And the RPO game, which was so successful for Philadelphia last year, even though I don't expect the New Orleans Saints to carbon copy what it is that Philadelphia did in 2024, they will use elements of that. and the RPO, which requires you to sit there with the football and make the decision of what you're going to do with it. But the run, pass option is really what it is. It's not just, oh, he might hand it off to the running back or he might pull and throw. It's also, he might hand it off to the running back, he might pull and throw, or he might keep the football. There's three different things that every defense has to be concerned about as they're crashing down on that mesh point between the quarterback and the running back. And so I do think that having a quarterback that is a threat to run, not necessarily is a threat while running, right? Different things there, but is truly a threat to run, will run the football. That's fine. Like, I don't think we can look at Baker Mayfield and say that he's a threat with the ball in his hands in the same way that we can say that Jaden Daniels is a threat with the ball in his hands. You feel me? But we can say that Baker Mayfield is just as much a threat to run as he is a threat to pass. He is just as much a threat to run as he is a threat to hand off. The threat presents itself in terms of what the kind of catalyst of the play will be. And so a lot of that shotgun work lends itself to things like the read option, the zone read, the RPO, all these other things, right? The quarterback keepers or the handoffs or the I'm not going to hand off, I'm actually going to throw because I got a coverage that I liked, or that corner did something, or that safety did something, whatever it might be, whatever that key is that they're reading at that mesh point where they decide to pull and throw, that is happening. And so you have to be able to present that kind of threat, and it compounds when your additional threat is that the quarterback can keep the ball and get on the move as well. And so the Saints could do this in 2025. If they decide to move on from Derek Carr, then all of a sudden the door is open to go to a Spencer Rattler, who's not the fastest when it comes to his 40 time, but had a 10-yard split, just 0.07 seconds slower than Jalen Hurts. And so the idea here is that you're not trying to rip off 50, 60-yard runs in a getaway fashion. If you get them, great. But if you're able to pick up a quick 10 yards, a quick 7 yards, that's what you're trying to do with these RPO games, the zone reads, the read options, things like that. So it does make Spencer Rattler a threat to run, right? Then you look at this draft class. Jaxson Dart, name continues to rise. Name continues to be one that gets more popularity, more attention, all these other things. He has the mobility in his game. Jalen Milroe, mobility over 700 rushing yards, he had 20 rushing touchdowns in 2024. If Kellen Moore is willing to work and develop a quarterback like Jalen Milroe, then all of a sudden he's an option. But they don't have to do this in 2025. Oh, and then Justin Fields, who could potentially hit the market in free agency. I don't know why he would leave Pittsburgh. I don't get it. But if he did, great for whoever lands him. You know what I mean? And so that's an easy 1 or 2 year deal, low risk, potential good reward out of that. They could do this in 2025, but they don't have to. They could wait until the 2026 draft class, roll with Derek Carr here in 2025, get into 2026, either trade up or stick and pick wherever you are in the first round in that situation. Lots of options in terms of how they and when they bring this quarterback in. Remember, Kellen Moore's tenure does not end after 2025. 2025 is this year of building the culture and deciding who they're going to be and figuring things out. And you're going to see coaching staff changes probably from 2025 to 2026. You're going to see more roster changes from 2025 to 2026. Like, there's going to be a lot different in 2026 than is here in 2025. And one of those big differences could be the fashion, the prototype, the archetype of quarterback that is running Kellen Moore's offense, for all we know. But we do know that a mobile quarterback with this heavy shotgun display, with the mobility that he's been successful with in the past, is almost a necessary thing for the New Orleans Saints to address at some point during Kellen Moore's tenure, ideally earlier rather than before it's too late. Coming up next, the New Orleans Saints offensive coaching staff is taking shape, and it's doing it in a really interesting way. We got that coming up for you as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This is a message from our sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to be getting any money back, then waiting and wondering and worrying some more. But now taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can get your taxes done as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert that will find you every deduction possible, that will file every form, every investment, and everything with 100% accuracy, all so that you can get your money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is taxes. Get an expert now at TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service, real-time updates only on the iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. All right, family. The New Orleans Saints offensive coaching staff is coming together, but it's coming together in a really interesting way. So far, it has been a blend of not just guys with connections to Kellen Moore, but all of a sudden, guys coming back to New Orleans, right? So it's been this interesting sort of blend of, hey, Kellen Moore's worked with this guy, or hey, this guy has been with the New Orleans Saints coaching staff before, and even in one case, a blend of both. So I wanted to discuss this because I think it's really interesting, and I think it tells us a couple different things. It gives us a little bit of a glimpse into how much this staff is Kellen Moore's, how much this staff, the New Orleans Saints themselves, will have sort of a feel for, maybe a little bit of their hands on, and then, or had their hands on maybe picking or saying, hey, we'd like this guy back, maybe something like that, some suggestion or vote in that way. But then I also think it gives you a glimpse into like why maybe some guys weren't around for a year. I'll explain. So let's go over the Saints coaching staff on the offensive side as we understand it. Offensive coordinator is not official, but according to both Nick Underhill over at New Orleans Football, as well as Josina Anderson over at Bovado, she and the two of them have everything leading towards Doug Nussmeier. And we've been talking about that for weeks as well. This is kind of where we felt like things were going, but now it sounds like the kind of conversations are happening and that things are moving towards the finalization of a contract, but nothing is imminent, nothing is done yet. You know, typical hiring conversation in the NFL. So it sounds like details are getting worked out that eventually Doug Nussmeier, who has been with Kellen Moore from Dallas to Los Angeles to Philly, will now come to New Orleans, or should now be expected to come to New Orleans, getting a promotion along with Kellen Moore from quarterback coach up to offensive coordinator, as Kellen Moore moves from offensive coordinator to head coach. The Saints also hired a run game coordinator in TJ Paganetti, who has been with the Philadelphia Eagles since like 2013. He was there from like 2013, 2014, went away for a little while, and then came back to the Eagles, and he's been with the Eagles again since like 2019 or whatever. And so that's a big one, I think, when you really look at it, because Nick Sirianni, the Eagles head coach, was super adamant about this idea that like you're not getting lateral moves from the Philadelphia Eagles. Well, TJ Paganetti was the assistant offensive line coach. I hope I'm pronouncing his last name correctly, by the way. Assistant offensive line coach and run game coordinator over in Philly. And so what's his title going to be here in New Orleans? We don't know just yet, but we know that he's going to have a big time role in developing the New Orleans Saints run game, which should be very exciting for Saints fans because he's really, really good at it. You saw them get the most out of Saquon Barkley last year in a way that the New York Giants were never able to do. I know Saquon's a really, really good running back, but remember, they didn't lean on him the first 4 games of the year, except for the one in New Orleans. And then all of a sudden they started leaning on him like later on in the year. That was really a week 4, week 5 decision by the time that they were really doing that. And then they got the best out of him. They did it in a way that the New York Giants were never able to. So yeah, Saquon's a really good talent, but you have to have good coaching, good scheming, all those other things. And if Paganetti's coming in as a run game coordinator and right, he could have a bunch of different roles as well. He could be like a co-OC while Doug Nussmeier gets the co-OC tag along with an assistant head coach tag or something like that. Like there's a lot of different ways you can play this to give that promotion so that it's not a lateral move from the Eagles, but we'll see which way it goes. And it would all be in title and in pay scale more than it would necessarily be actual responsibilities. Like your role as a run game coordinator would still be your focused role, kind of like when the Saints had the co-defensive coordinators, even though that didn't work out. Really, it was a title thing. And then Nielsen coached the defensive line, and then Chris Richard coached the secondary, and kind of like what they did was what they did. And then they were a part of the game planning in different areas, right? Defensive pass game as well as defensive run game. Like those guys had their focuses, everything like that. But Dennis Allen's defense was still very much Dennis Allen's defense, even though there was some, clear conflict and tension between what that situation was. That came down probably more so to promises than it came down to actually what the roles were. But TJ Paganetti, huge addition for New Orleans. So he comes in as a run game coordinator. The Saints bring in Scott Tolzien as the quarterbacks coach, former NFL quarterback, was spent time as an offensive assistant in Dallas along with Kellen Moore. and then moved up when Kellen Moore and Doug Nussmeier went over to Los Angeles. He moved into the quarterback coach's role, which was Doug Nussmeier's role. And so he's had that title for the past couple of years. So he 2023, 2024, working with Dak Prescott, did some good stuff over there. And so now him coming over as the quarterback's coach, another young coach in his 30s. Running back coach Joel Thomas returns to New Orleans after 1 year away over with the New York Giants. He is now back. Got some of the best years of the run game out of the New Orleans Saints. Joined in 2015, was here all the way through 2022, left in 2023, and then came back. We're going to circle back to Joel Thomas here in a second. Another return offensive line coach, Brendan Nugent. This one was done a little while ago, but that's the guy that is not only a return to the New Orleans Saints coaching staff, spending several years as an assistant offensive line coach, and then was the offensive line coach for a year before departing to the Chargers. And the two of them, Brendan Nugent and Kellen Moore, worked together with the Chargers back in 2023. So that one's a little bit of a joint thing between the two, right? He's somebody that the Saints brought back, but also, or is returning to the Saints, but also is somebody that has experience with Kellen Moore. The Saints are keeping wide receivers coach Keith Williams. Great move there. And then they bring in Chase Haslett, the son of former New Orleans Saints head coach Jim Haslett, as the tight ends coach. Chase Haslett and Kellen Moore work together, of course, also in Dallas. So you can feel all of the connections here, whether it's from, you got some guys that come over from Kellen Moore's Cowboys days, some guys that come over from Kellen Moore's Chargers days, some guys that come over from Kellen Moore's Philly days, and then one guy in Doug Nussmeier, assuming that he is the offensive coordinator, that comes away from all of them, right? So I think you're seeing like the connections to Kellen Moore, but then you're also seeing like the New Orleans Saints being like, hey, we'd like to keep Keith Williams, right? And that could have been a Kellen Moore decision, but I think the Saints would say something like that if they had somebody that they wanted to keep around. Like, hey, we'd love to keep Keith Williams around. Hey, we'd love to bring back Joel Thomas if he's somebody you're interested in. Like, whatever those conversations are, I don't think those are just one-sided conversations where Kellen Moore is going, you know what? Bring that Joel Thomas guy back. You know what I mean? I think the Saints probably have something to do with that. So it's an interesting blend of how this coaching staff is coming together, of Kellen Moore guys and then still some New Orleans Saints guys. And I think too that like it goes to show you a little bit when it comes to a Joel Thomas, and I don't want to put words in Joel Thomas's mouth or anything like that, but like from me coming from a very, like I'm going to be very honest. I'm not going to sit here and try to like skirt and tell you that I know something that I don't. But for me to be very honest, to sit back and like look at that, I have to wonder how much Joel Thomas's departure from New Orleans had to do with the relationships and the deteriorating sort of situation within the coaching staff and locker room in New Orleans. Like I have to wonder at least, and I could be wrong, that's okay, but I have to at least wonder, did Joel Thomas say, you know what? I'm not about what's going on here anymore. I'm out. And then took a lateral move to go over to the New York Giants, or was there something that went on between him and Dennis Allen or something like that? Like Dennis Allen did not create the most like conducive environment, the more and more stories that come out about him. And even Amy Trask's stories from the previous Raiders days kind of clued you in on that before his tenure even began here in New Orleans. And so, no, I don't feel like it's a far-fetched thing for me to assume that like, yeah, you know what? Joel Thomas came back because Joel Thomas wants to be here in New Orleans. He was already planning to come back for Mardi Gras and everything like that. And so, you got to wonder maybe if there's some fill in the blanks here, you know? And look, Joel Thomas never needs to address it. He never needs to talk about anything like that. In fact, if I was him, I would just be happy to be back and everything like that. But man, you got to wonder if maybe like seeing the positive change that's going on in New Orleans right now was like, okay, I have a chance to go back to where I want to be. And for some reason, that was not an option for him in 2023 when it should have been. Coming up next, let's take a look at the New Orleans Saints in 2025. Not necessarily the expectations around how they're going to do, but I want to dive into the expectations of what they probably won't do, which is be 2025's version of the Philadelphia Eagles in 2024. We got that coming up for you next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, the official sports betting sponsors here on the Locked On Podcast Network and America's #1 sportsbook, where you can get in on all of the exciting NBA action and make it even more exciting because of all the different things that they have to offer. Even if you miss tip-off, you can still get in thanks to live betting on all of the action. Fourth quarter comeback, leading scorer, all of it's still very much available to you. You can even pick who's going to like win each quarter and all these other things. Like there's a ton of really good stuff. And right now it gets even better for new customers because new customers have a chance to get $150 in bonus bets. All you got to do is win your first $5 bet over at FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $150 in bonus bets. All you got to do is win that first $5 bet. So put that first $5 on a heavy favorite. For instance, tonight, the Cleveland Cavaliers, 13.5-point favorites over the Brooklyn Nets. Put it on the money line, walk away with a little bit of winnings, but $150 in bonus bets as well. So make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. The New Orleans Saints are right to have high expectations of themselves going into 2025, but don't expect them to be a complete clone of the Philadelphia Eagles in 2024. And I'm not even talking about results, right? I'm not even talking about the fact that like, oh yeah, the Saints aren't going to go and have, a 10+ win season and win their division and go to the playoffs and clean up throughout the playoffs and score, a ton of points in the final 2 games on their way to a Super Bowl win. No, that's not even what I mean. What I mean is, don't necessarily expect the New Orleans Saints to look like the Philadelphia Eagles in 2024, run heavy, 29th in passing attempts in the league, to, try to just replicate that game plan from the Philadelphia Eagles. And if you want to know a reason why, look at that coaching staff that we just highlighted. It's not a bunch of Philadelphia Eagles guys. Now, there's going to be some Philadelphia Eagles flavor to it. There will be a heavy run game. Don't get me wrong. I think that's evidenced by TJ Paganetti and Kellen Moore, Doug Nussmeier. Like, those guys are going to want to run the football. There's no doubt about that. But I wouldn't expect them to be a team that relies on their quarterback to go and get him a bunch of rushing yards, that takes the passing option away from the quarterback at certain points and only throws the ball. Again, number 29 in the NFL in passing attempts. Don't expect the New Orleans Saints to look that way, especially if they roll into 2025 with Derek Carr. They're going to feel comfortable letting Derek Carr throw the football. And so with all of that in mind, I want to highlight what I think we can expect this New Orleans Saints team to look like. And I think the offensive coaching staff gives us a little bit of a glimpse behind that. You're looking at an offensive line that's expected to be athletic, but also expected to just stand up and win. I think that's what you saw with the Los Angeles Chargers approach. Los Angeles Chargers approach back in 2023 wasn't a ton of, get these guys on the move and move the pocket and all these other things. It was let Justin Herbert at 6'20", whatever he is, right? 6'4", 6'5", stand in the pocket and deliver. And then let him go and, run like a gazelle when he needs to and all those other things. But otherwise, it was stand up in pass protection, win your battles, give your quarterback time. That was the plan with that offensive line, along with, of course, being able to win in the run game. But remember, the Chargers didn't have like top-end production at running back. They were in the 20s when it came to the run game, rushing yards in 2023 in Kellen Moore's offense. But they threw the football. That's what they look to do. So I think with you bringing over Brendan Nugent, who was around in New Orleans when it was a stand and deliver type of offense with Drew Brees, who was around with the Chargers throughout the time that it was a stand and deliver type offense with Justin Herbert at the helm, expect them to be willing to do that. One of the things that Kellen Moore said was that he doesn't care if he's got to run the ball 50 times or pass the ball 50 times, if whatever it is that he has to do gets the team a win. And I love that mentality because, again, it's not that stubborn mentality of, well, we do what we do no matter what works and what doesn't. Why do the thing that's not working? Hold on, like, logical question. Why do the thing that's not working, right? Like, why not do the thing that is working? And so I think you have to have that balanced offense. We talked about the balanced run game in yesterday's episode, but the balance between run and pass is something that I think you're going to see represented here as well, even if it is skewed a little bit more over to the run, which is understandable. It's understandable, especially in today's NFL. Defenses have gotten smaller and smaller and smaller. Now offenses are trying to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and then eventually the defenses are going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and then the offenses are going to go back to getting smaller and smaller and smaller. It's a cyclical nature of the NFL. Offense leads the way. And so I think you're seeing the run game return. It's why people are talking about potentially 3 first-round running backs going in this year's class. It's one of the reasons why people are saying, yes, invest in the running back position. And investing might be draft capital more than it is financial capital right now, but eventually that conversation is going to turn. And I think you're seeing that because of the success of aging running backs in the NFL. You're seeing it with the success of young running backs in the NFL. Running backs are eating right now. And I think you're going to watch a lot of teams begin to invest in that. And I think you see that here for New Orleans when it comes to the next part of this conversation, the run game. Run game coordinator, bringing one in. who was a run game coordinator with the Philadelphia Eagles. We don't know what his title is just yet here in New Orleans, but we assume he's going to have something and a hand in building up the run game. But then on top of that, also bringing back Joel Thomas, who got the absolute best in 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022 out of Alvin Kamara. And then also was able to get great stuff in 2020, 2017, 2018 out of Mark Ingram, 2019, 2020 out of Latavius Murray. So he's been able to get success with the, change of pace outside, get him out in space type running back, the satellite back in Alvin Kamara. And then also got great success with the between the tackles guys that had some versatility in Latavius Murray as well as Mark Ingram. And the pass blocking that those guys were able to do under Joel Thomas was outstanding as well. Helps all three phases of that conversation: the inside run, the outside run, the zone run, the man run, as well as, of course, pass protection and pass catching, right? Getting these guys comfortable with running routes and all these other things. Joel Thomas did a really good job of that. So expect that to be another big part of it. Keeping Keith Williams around, I think you can continue to expect to see the growth of these wide receivers. I'm going to hold on the wide receiver conversation a little bit too much, though, because I want to see who else they add to the wide receiver room, because the Saints need that big-bodied guy. And that big-bodied pass catcher could come from what it is that the Saints are doing with the wide receivers, or it could be what they look to do with the tight ends. And now you have Chase Hazlitt, who got great years out of Dalton Schultz as well as Jake Ferguson during his time. I think you're looking at the sort of rise of the tight end back in the New Orleans Saints offense in a way that is a little bit more sustainable than what we've seen over the course of the past couple of years. And this goes along with what Sean Payton talked about when they traded all their entire day 3 to move up and draft Adam Troutman, when they were saying that they wanted to do more 2 tight end stuff. Well, they did a ton of it last year, and it actually wasn't a bad choice for them. It was probably their most consistent game plan towards the end of the season, was the way that those tight ends were able to contribute. But now you got to boost the talent at the position and see how you can continue to build the contributions out of all around tight ends. And that's something that Chase Hazlitt has done well. Dalton Schultz, Jake Ferguson, both all around guys. So how do you find success with multiple versions of that? Foster Moreau and somebody else. And who is that somebody else? Is Juwan Johnson back? Do they push forward with Alan Holker? Do they draft somebody? Do they bring somebody in through free agency? However it is that they build and bolster that talent, they have a coach that has a proven track record in bolstering exactly that kind of talent. And by the way, they have a head coach and offensive play caller that's also proven to do that as well. Look at what he did with Dallas Goedert in 2024 when you look at Kellen Moore. And a lot of what Chase Hazlitt was able to do with Dalton Schultz, also Kellen Moore had a hand in as well. So I think you can give both of those guys credit there. So I think you're really looking at a blend of all three of these things. And hopefully what you end up seeing is the best of all three of what they take, right? The run game from Philly, the offensive line approach in terms of the pass blocking approach from Los Angeles. And then you try to bring over the skill positions to pass catchers and a little bit of that mentality from what they did with CeeDee Lamb and all these other receivers, Brandon Cooks. And then you look at, the tight ends over in Dallas, and then rejuvenate the running back to what you saw here in New Orleans. Like, you don't have to go far from that, right? From a position coach standpoint. So I think a blend of all of these things is really what you're about to see in New Orleans. It's not going to be cut and paste from what you saw in Philadelphia. And I think that's a good thing, because once the film catches up with you, you've got to be able to adjust. So you might as well adjust before the film shows up, right? And I think that that's what you're going to see Kellen Moore and his offensive staff doing. So, and by the way, I'm not just saying when I talk about the offensive line and the pass blocking over in Los Angeles, obviously they're going to be a huge part of the run game as well. So I separated the run game from Philly to include the offensive line, and then the offensive line play as a pass protecting unit, the focus on that from Los Angeles. So I just want to make sure I clarify that as well. All right, coming up tomorrow, hopefully we'll be talking about a hire for the New Orleans Saints. If not, just one offensive coordinator, maybe an offensive coordinator and a defensive coordinator, because the defensive coaching staff is up next for New Orleans. So I want to break that down as well. What are some of the best possible additions that the Saints could have on their defensive coaching staff? We'll break all that down in tomorrow's episode. We appreciate you very much, as always, making us a part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me on the show. If you see me, please say hi. If you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jaxson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you're living. Let me know how you're momming them. And trust you, that nation, I'll holla at you.